Hello and welcome. Many times I've seen the same question appearing on Reddit or on forums. When starting sim racing on PC, which sim should I start with? And in relation to rFactor 2, is it for example still worth buying? The answer to that is a complicated one, as is rFactor 2 as a piece of software. I've owned a copy for a while now and have been tracking its progress, and had been thinking about creating a video outlining what I've learned so far and which I hoped might help get some others started. In this video we'll discuss the installation and setup of rFactor 2 along with how to get started with single player races. Multiplayer is also available, but that and some other options we leave out for now. rFactor 2 is available via Steam only these days, and it has gone through some major changes over the years. Most recently switching from Microsoft's DirectX 9 to DirectX 11. And as a side note, most recently the only sim to include the new BMW M8 GTE. This video will be based on the current version of the user interface, and which has been in place for a while now. The user interface is due a major overhaul at some point, so some elements may change. Some core concepts will I expect remain in place, so what you learn here will I expect still be relevant. When installing rFactor 2, some may choose to install the game on a separate hard disk. For example, if you have Windows installed on one disk and your Steam games on another. Or for performance reasons you install rFactor 2 on a solid state drive. I can't confirm whether installing rFactor 2 on a solid state drive offers better performance, but if you have such a setup then maybe try it out. You can add additional Steam library folders using the following path. Once you have rFactor 2 installed, you should set the game properties to remain up to date. And now, since the DirectX 11 version is out of beta, make sure to opt out of any beta versions. rFactor 2 utilizes the Steam Workshop for the installation of both first and third party cars and tracks, as well as some other items such as heads-up display apps. You can still also manually install cars and tracks, and as it's still relevant for some content, we'll cover them as well. As an example, we'll download a mod of Le Mans. I'll include the link below in the description. When looking for mods of cars or tracks, you should always check the Steam Workshop first to see if it's possibly also available there. This makes the installation a whole lot easier, along with automating the delivery of any possible updates. Once we have our track file downloaded, we'll need to copy it to the packages folder inside our rFactor 2 installation directory. Then we start the rFactor 2 launcher and open the packages tool. If the new file doesn't appear, try refreshing the list. And note that you can sort your installed items by type, which is useful. Sorting the installed column will also help you find the item, and once you've found it, select it and click install. I should note that there's also some paid for third-party mod content available, for example from UnitedRacingDesign.net. That site is relevant since it offers an unofficial version of the current 4 GT to go along with the official endurance car content that was also recently released. And that version of the 4 GT includes some of the features of the official cars, such as position lights. The Steam Workshop for rFactor 2 is available from the rFactor 2 page in your Steam library. And adding content is just a matter of finding an item and clicking subscribe. Steam will then download it, and when you run rFactor 2, it will complete the process of adding the workshop content you've selected. Along with the workshop content, all of which is free by the way, there is also paid for DLC. Visit the rFactor 2 store page and check the available items section. Note that since this DLC is made available as in-game items on Steam, they'll appear in your Steam account inventory. As far as I can tell, it would be possible to purchase an item here more than once, or at least I don't know of a "this content is already in your library" option. So if you don't recall which items you already own, please check your inventory first before purchasing more. And as you can see, these paid for items are made available via the workshop. When getting started with rFactor 2, one feature that some might miss is the video settings available through the launcher. The following are the options I'm currently using for an NVIDIA GTX 970, an Intel Core i5 CPU with 8 GB of RAM, on a 1080p 60Hz display. You may find the borderless mode easier if you wish to use full screen and regularly switch between multiple application windows like I tend to do. Once you've started rFactor 2, you should begin by checking the options section. Note that the video res section here is similar to the video settings from the launcher, with some options missing. Again, these are my own current settings. If you make changes here, the game will need to quickly restart itself. The display tab includes quite a few options. Again, the following are my own current settings, and which, to be honest, I'm still tweaking on a regular basis. I read somewhere that setting opponent detail to low might help to improve performance. In all cases, of course, it will depend on which content you're running, and which applies to all aspects of the title as a rule. I noticed that turning off shadow blur may cause the shadows that appear on a car interior to look quite poor, so perhaps try and leave this on. Visible vehicles is the draw distance for opponents appearing around you. You could, for example, set this to a value of 10 and then set up a race with 30 or so opponents where you start at the rear, and once the race begins, up ahead you'll see only 10 or so opponents appearing. We'll set the default view as cockpit since we're driving with a wheel. I usually run steering wheel set to no arms, so only the wheel appears. Auto Detail FPS is, I understand, the ability to set the game to run at a specific refresh rate, in this case at a maximum of 60 Hz, as set in the video settings. Controls driving. Speed limiter can be used to limit your speed when in a pit lane. Brake bias is adjustable in many cars. Ignition and starter can be used to start a car should you happen to stall. Headlights and wipers are useful to have since rFactor 2 includes both day to night transitions and rain effects. Request pit. I've read that requesting a pit before you arrive in the pit lane can make pit stops quicker. Traction control and ABS. The new GTE cars support setting a numerical traction control value as opposed to high, medium, low or off. And before starting a session in the garage, you can use a map function to set the value to begin with. Controls aids. The function keys control some of the options available in plugins and difficulty. And note that these options are also accessible when starting up a race session. With Auto Shift, you can enable or disable the automatic shifting while driving. Traction control and ABS. These are the original controls for high, medium, low or off. Auto Pit can be used to set your car to automatically enter and exit a pit lane. Auto clutch can be used to enable or disable the automatic clutch while you're driving. Controls seat. One nice feature in rFactor 2 is the ability to change the vertical field of view on the fly. I use a baseline of 40 and tweak accordingly. And you can also modify your seating position. Controls display. The numerical keys from 3 to 6 can be used to control the main heads-up display options. The labels function can be used to enable or disable the appearance of opponent names. LCD mode is a useful feature for flipping the LCD display. Pit display can be used to bring up the pit setup controls. LCD up and down. You can use this function to, for example, navigate the pit controls. Controls miscellaneous. Skip formation. This option can be used if you, for example, started a race which includes a formation lap, but once you begin, you then wish to skip it. The restart function can be used to restart a single player race. Time acceleration. Note that this and some other functions require the use of the control key plus a key of your choice. I noticed during a recent live stream that Billy Strange did using rFactor 2 that he was using the time acceleration function on single player races both in qualifying and practice sessions.
Let's run a little practice. Let's fast forward here. There we go.
I wasn't aware of the logic behind this, so I asked Billy and his reply was as follows. In order for the AI to calculate the qualifying lap time correctly, you need to fast forward, never skip. Most sims have a hard time simulating an accurate lap time if you just skip to the end or the next session. Usually the lap times will be unrealistically fast. Fast forwarding the session, however, does not seem to skew the lap time. Frame rate. A frame rate counter is also available should you wish to use it. Again, this option requires the use of the control key plus a key of your choice. Plugins and difficulty. These are important to note and apply accordingly. Refer to the Controls Aid section to assign buttons or keys so you can modify these when driving. And note that you can also set these as part of the settings for an individual race session. Replay. I've read that if you're not utilizing the replay functions, that disabling them may assist in improving application performance. On-screen display. Choosing which heads-up display to use will mostly be down to personal preference. There are some additional heads-up display options available to install via the Steam Workshop for rFactor 2. The default 397 HUD I like to use for some F1 style cars. SHQM HUD is available from the Steam Workshop, and I like to use this for GT style cars. Include race events. For predefined races against the AI, which if I recall correctly, you could set it so that only those would appear, but not any more now it seems. For me it doesn't matter, as I never really used it. All tracks and cars is just that, all the content that you have installed. I guess we can just ignore the series tab in this case. As I noted, the user interface is to be overhauled at some point. Currently I would say that it would be useful to know the tracks you've installed or added from the workshop. There's an option to apply custom AI opponent parameters for each track. I've never used this though. For car selection, and again with the current user interface, it would help to know the content you have installed. Again, you get used to it after a while. Session settings. You can select to run either practice, qualifying or race, or all three together. Practice and qualifying. You can set both practice or qualifying to be private, so just you appear on the track, and you can also set the time you wish to use. Race start type. You can select standing or rolling start. Finish criteria. To specify the type of race you wish to run. For simplicity, you can select a number of laps or a time period. In this example, we'll go with a time period. Start time can be, for example, 3 PM. Race time, just a quick session of 15 minutes. Grid position. You can set this as random or a specific position. Timescale. This can be normal or none or a multiplier. Real road. Here you can set how the track surface will behave over time. Note that this setting is related to the weather effects selection. Simple weather can be either a preset or scripted, where you choose the conditions. And if you choose a preset, the real road effect is also predefined based on the track you've chosen. Selecting simple weather scripted. Using the sky option, you can set the weather conditions for each percentage of the session length. Along with a real road effect. Some tracks include some real road presets as well. Real road timescale. There's a time multiplier for tracks. To be honest, I haven't even tried this yet. Run warm-up. You can choose to include a warm-up session as part of the session. Flag rules, for example, full or black only. You can then set your fuel usage and tyre wear, and then set mechanical failures. This setting is related to the invulnerability setting in the difficulty section. since mechanical failures don't apply if invulnerability is turned on. AI drivers. Here you can set the number of AI opponents you decide to use. When setting a value here, you can combine it with the grid position option above. The following can be set for individual sessions: damage multiplier, AI strength, AI aggression, and AI limiter. You can limit the performance strength of the AI using the AI limiter. At 0%, the AI would perform without limitations, which in turn depends upon the AI strength and aggression values also applied. Opponent filter. Again, like the car selector, this filter is tricky to use and is due an overhaul. Opponents. The results of your opponent filter selections will appear here. As you can see, there are many combination options for setting up a single player race, but let's just create an example. We'll set up a very quick 12 hours of Sebring. We set the start at 3 PM with a race time of 16 minutes and with a timescale multiplier of 45. 16 minutes by 45 is 720, which is 12 hours. Once we started the race, we can use the LCD mode controls to check the time calculation. And then we'll add another quick race at Le Mans. Beginning at 5 PM for 15 minutes with a multiplier of 30. 15 minutes by 30 is 450 minutes, which is 7.5 hours. Each track includes its own settings and time of year data, which are then used to determine when darkness should fall. Setting the real road option to user autosave will store the conditions created from the previous single player session. So if the track was wet at the end of one single player session, it will then be wet when you start the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to support the channel. And if you know somebody who's interested in rFactor 2, then possibly share the video with them. And any comments or questions you might have are always welcome in the comments section below. Until next time, goodbye.